Hi, this video is an introduction for pupils studying higher graphic communication. It's an introduction into the Inventor 3D modelling skills required for the higher graphic communication course. I understand at the moment that obviously you can't get access to the Inventor course or the Inventor software because you're working from home. But what I plan to try and do through this video is show you the different techniques that you're going to need for higher graphic communication and how to access some of the revision material on the subject. So when we're back in school, hopefully in August, you will get a booklet of higher Inventor basic modelling skills, and this is going to take you through the 5 different techniques. So the first technique is going to be one that you've used before, which is the extrude command. So in the extrude command in the basic skills, what we're going to look at doing here is trying to create this object, which is shown on the page in front of you, and then from that create an elevation and then a plan view of the object with dimensions onto it. The object looks quite complicated, and it is, in that it brings in a number of different skills. But to show you what the first object looks like, this is it here, and what it's got is it's all been extruded to a depth. So it started originally as a sketch. If I can get my Inventor to look at my sketch. There we go. That's what we started off as my original sketch. And it's quite a complicated looking sketch, but then it was just extruded to give it a depth of that. From that initial sketch, then we looked at adding some fillets onto it, adding some fillets onto the corners, something you should have done in National 5. We've then got an additional extrusion which is added to it. Again, nothing difficult from what you've done in National 5. Through to an additional one down here. And this is probably one of the more complicated ones, where what we're actually looking at doing is drawing this sketch here, which includes arcs, tangent to circles, something that we'll talk about within the course, and then we're extruding that over a distance. So that's the first object. So extrude is something that you should have done throughout your time in S3 and S4. So it should be nothing particularly new to you. The second sheet that we'll move on to after that is using the Revolve command. Once again, something that is not particularly new to you, but what we're looking to try and do is create a series of objects using the Revolve command. It is a plunger, the 2 different parts of the plunger. So in the first part, we have the bottom of the plunger, which is round in shape, which would be very difficult to make with any other command apart from Revolve. And it's got these 2 little parts here where the little extra bits which go around the object, and then we have got the plunger itself, which is quite straightforward, but apart from it, it's got these little grooves which are cut around the outside of it. So we're looking to try and create that. So if we show you what these objects look like, this is the plunger itself, which is quite straightforward. It's round in shape. So what we're looking at doing is using a revolve. If I show you the initial sketch that I did, quite a complex looking sketch again, using curves, etc., using dimensions, revolving it about this axis to create the shape. And then after that, going in and adding an additional sketch of these 2 little semicircles, and again revolving them around the shape to create the finished object. The plunger itself was quite straightforward. I started off by using an extrusion with a fillet on top, but then to do the grooves on here, if I show you edit sketch, there was a little circle made here, and then it was revolved, subtracted around the outside of it, and then we used a rectangular pattern to create the additional objects. So they're the 2 that you're probably used to, and we've got a worksheet for each of those. New ones that you won't have seen before are the sweep command. So in the sweep command, this is how to make an object that has a profile. So it takes a shape, in this case just a very simple circle, and then it takes that circle and it puts it around a shape to create an object. So the paperclip here, I started with a very simple sketch, which was a circle, and then I sketched a profile I wanted it to follow, which was this line shape, and then when I use the sweep command, it gives me that shape. Now this could have been any shape, this could have been a square, a hexagon, any shape at all, it would follow that path. So that's another one of the skills that you're going to learn how to do in the Inventor course. The next command is what's called a helix. A helix is what you would use to create a spring. Basically, in Inventor, this is called a coil, but in SQL, want us to call it a helix. So this is where we take a profile and we revolve it around a center, but what it does is it also gives it height as well as revolving it. So in this case, creating a spring. So if I show you the example of the spring here, we've got the circular profile at the bottom, and then it revolves up through. Now in this, we can specify a number of things. We can specify the number of revolutions it does and the distance between each of them. So if I was to just change this for a second, so instead of having 5 between each of them, I could specify that as 3, and I could, instead of having 5 revolutions, I could make it 10, and I do OK. What I end up with is a spring, a bigger spring, which is tighter together. There is one other command which we have still to do, which would be a loft. Now, loft's a command where you can actually go from one shape to another shape. So, for example, you could do a solid which goes from a square to a circle. Now, all of this is possible to revise or have a look through the notes in the set of notes called Hierographic Commission 3D Modeling Revision Notes. These are available on the school website and also the technical department website, technicaldep.co.uk, and you can go through and it tells you the sort of things that you can do with a 3D model. This is some of the knowledge that would come up within an exam, where you can use a 3D model for manufacturing, meaning you can send the drawings directly to a computer for it to manufacture them. You could transfer of 3D model files, meaning you could send your files to somebody elsewhere in the world. If they don't have your software, you could maybe use IGS files or step files, and that would be able to open up in any 3D modeling software. You could create production drawings. These are the type of drawings that you're used to creating through National 4 and National 5. We've got 3D prototyping, where you could actually send it to a 3D printer to actually manufacture it. We could simulate or test with the model, or we could create a rendered illustration, something you're used to doing. But further on in the notes, it explains the extrude, it explains the revolve command, it explains the loft, it explains the sweep or extrusion along a path, and the helix command. In addition, it mentions the different edits that you'd be expected to recognise of shell, fillet, chamfer, array, and mirror. Well, I hope this was a reasonable start to introduction to Autodesk Inventor. I know it's not the same as actually getting onto the computer and actually creating them, but I thought it was important at this early stage to show you the 5 different techniques. Hopefully, I might be able to get information on how you can actually download a free version of Autodesk Inventor. If you have a computer at home or a laptop at home, you could download a free version of the software and maybe have a go at trying to make some of these components using the worksheets that we've got. Otherwise, when we get back in August, we can have a go at trying to do this. Inventor will form a huge part of the course this year, so it's important that we try and get your skills up to as good as possible before we start going into the more complicated parts of Inventor.